Senator,
You gave Iraq permission to give Iran $10 billion, didn't you?
No, Senator. As I mentioned, this was something that started in 2018 under the Trump administration. It allowed Iraq to purchase electricity and to store that money in Iraq. None of that money to date will ever go to Iran. The money is being held for humanitarian purposes.
You're not telling the truth, Mr. Secretary. No disrespect, but that's just not true. Senator Menendez and Senator Scott made the point. We all know, unless you peaked in high school, you know that money is fungible. The Biden administration also paid Iran $6 billion to release 5 of our prisoners, didn't it?
Senator, again, that money is in Qatar. None of that money has been used.
Distinguished members of the Senate Banking Committee convened today for a pivotal hearing, where Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana engaged in a probing dialogue with Deputy Treasury Secretary Adewale Adeyemo. During the Senate Banking Committee hearing, Senator John Kennedy raised concerns regarding the Biden administration's approach towards Iran, implying that waivers had been issued to facilitate Iran's access to funds. In response, Deputy Treasury Secretary Adewale Adeyemo clarified that these waivers originated during the Trump administration and emphasized that the funds in question were earmarked for humanitarian purposes in Iraq, not for Iran. Despite Kennedy's attempts to highlight specific waiver issuance dates, Adeyemo reiterated that these waivers were part of an existing program. He underscored that the funds were designated for humanitarian aid within Iraq and categorically stated that no funds had been or would be transferred to Iran.
Mr. Secretary, the Biden administration has operated as Iran's best friend, hasn't it?
No, I disagree completely, Senator.
Well, Iran sold Iraq $10 billion worth of electricity, but Iraq couldn't pay them because of our sanctions against Iran. Biden administration waived those sanctions, didn't it?
Senator,
so that Iran could get $10 billion. Isn't that a fact?
No, Senator. Those waivers started under the Trump administration. That money is still in Iraq. That money has never been to Tehran. It will never go to Tehran.
The first waiver was on July 2023, wasn't it?
Senator, I believe those waivers started in 2018.
The first waiver that the Biden administration did was July of 2023, wasn't it?
So, Senator, again, I believe the waiver program started in.
You didn't issue a waiver on July of 2023.
Senator, the waivers were continued into 2023.
And you issued another waiver to get the money to Iran in November of 2023, didn't you?
Senator, as I said, that money has never been, will never go to Iran. The money is still in Iraq. The money may be used for humanitarian purposes, but not a dollar of that money.
And you issued another waiver on March of 2024, not too long ago. That was 6 weeks after Iran killed 3 American soldiers.
Senator,
You gave Iraq permission to give Iran $10 billion.
Senator Kennedy persisted in questioning Deputy Treasury Secretary Adewale Adeyemo, challenging the assertion that funds intended for humanitarian purposes in Iraq would not indirectly benefit Iran. Kennedy contended that the fungibility of money made such distinctions irrelevant, accusing Adeyemo of misleading the committee. Adeyemo maintained that the funds remained in Qatar, emphasizing the integrity of the banking system's relationship with the United States. Despite Kennedy's skepticism, Adeyemo reiterated that no funds had been or would be directly transferred to Iran. Kennedy then shifted the focus to Venezuela, accusing the Biden administration of lifting sanctions on oil and mining, effectively aiding the Maduro regime. Adeyemo confirmed the removal of certain sanctions, but refrained from conceding Kennedy's characterization of the situation.
No, Senator. As I mentioned, this was something that started in 2018 under the Trump administration. It allowed Iraq to purchase electricity and to store that money in Iraq. None of that money to date will ever go to Iran. The money is being held for humanitarian purposes.
You're not telling the truth, Mr. Secretary. No disrespect, but that's just not true. Senator Menendez and Senator Scott made the point. We all know, unless you peaked in high school, you know that money is fungible. You also, the Biden administration also paid Iran $6 billion to release 5 of our prisoners, didn't it?
Senator, again, that money is in Qatar. None of that money has been used. It hasn't been moved. And as I said earlier, while money is fungible in the United States because we care about our people, it's not fungible for the Iranian.
So the money's in Qatar, in a bank in Qatar?
Yes.
Now, what do you think? Who controls that bank in Qatar?
Those banks are controlled by those individuals who run that financial institution.
I see. So if President Biden says Qatar Bank, don't give this money to Iran, and the Qatar government says give the money to Iran, who do you think the Qatar Bank's going to listen to, Mr. Secretary?
So, Senator, those banks in Qatar value greatly their ability to have a relationship with the
Right.
United States because
Right.
that's how they make money.
Do you believe in the
Ultimately,
tooth fairy?
Ultimately, if we cut off those banks, they will no longer be able to make money.
Do you believe in the Easter Bunny?
So, Senator, while I understand your point, fundamentally, none of that money has gone to Iran, and that money is not going to go directly to Iran.
Now, you did the same thing with Maduro, you meaning the Biden administration. You guys did the same thing with Maduro in Venezuela. You removed all the sanctions on oil and mining, including gold, with Maduro, the dictator of Venezuela, didn't you?
So GL 44 and 43 were put in place in Venezuela. 43 has already.
Is that a yes?
GL
Senator Kennedy continued to criticize the Biden administration's actions, arguing that by lifting sanctions on Venezuela's oil and mining industries, the administration indirectly supported the Maduro regime. He highlighted Maduro's failure to uphold promises of free and fair elections, instead imprisoning political opponents. Deputy Secretary Adeyemo clarified that while certain sanctions were not renewed, they had not been permanently lifted, pointing to General License 44, which would soon expire, reinstating those sanctions. Kennedy expressed frustration, accusing the administration of being naive in its approach to Iran, Venezuela, and other countries perceived as hostile to the United States. Adeyemo reaffirmed the administration's commitment to countering Iran's destabilizing activities and requested additional tools from the Senate to achieve this goal.
So you said, okay, Maduro, we're going to remove Maduro, best friends with Iran and Cuba and China and Russia. The Biden administration removed the sanctions on oil and mining in Venezuela.
Senator.
And Maduro said, I promise you that I'll hold a free and fair election. And then he put all his opponents in jail. And the Biden administration has done nothing, hasn't it, except stand there sucking on its teeth.
So, Senator, I want to say again, we provided general licenses. We did not remove the sanctions. The reason we did that was because we did not trust. So what we can do
The
with those
sanctions on Maduro's oil are not there, are they?
General License 44, which gives permission for the sale of oil, expires on April 17th, which will then put those sanctions back in place. We did not remove the sanctions. We provided general
The
license.
problem you folks have is that you want to quote Socrates in the middle of a bar fight. Iran is not our friend. Venezuela is not our friend. President Biden keeps giving them money to buy weapons to try to kill us.
Senator, we
Do you
put
not
500
understand that?
sanctions on the Iranian regime. We have not allowed a dollar from Qatar or from the Iraqi electricity fund to flow to Iran.
That's just not true. Senator Menendez explained that to you.
The money,
How can you be that obtuse?
Senator, as I've said, our goal is to make sure that we take every action to prevent Iran's destabilizing activity in the region. We're going to continue to go after Iran's sale of oil and try and limit their ability as best we can using the tools that you've given us. I'm here before the Senate asking for additional tools that will allow us to continue to do that.